The following presentation covers the retreat of the Union Army through the town of Gettysburg on the first day of the battle. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon on July 1st, 1863. The Battle of Gettysburg has turned in favor of the South. Ewell's Corps, coming in from the north and northeast, and A.P. Hill's Corps, coming in from the northwest, have coordinated an attack against Schurz's Corps north of town and Doubleday's Corps on Seminary Ridge and Oak Ridge. Schurz's Corps is retreating toward town, and Doubleday's situation is increasingly precarious. The Confederates have succeeded in taking numerous ridges and hills through the afternoon of July 1st. They now are in possession of McPherson's Ridge in purple and Barlow's Knoll in yellow. The weary Union defenders in Doubleday's Corps hold on to the Seminary Ridge in white, but Oak Ridge in green is falling, and renewed Confederate attacks are underway. General Howard has made Cemetery Hill, southeast of town, the fallback position for the Union Army. Unfortunately, Howard's headquarters at Cemetery Hill is vulnerable. Von Steinwehr's division had been placed on Cemetery Hill earlier that day in a reserve position. Steinwehr has 2 brigades in his division. One brigade, under Coster, had already been sent north of town to support Howard's endangered line, and Coster is now stuck in an impossible position north of town. This means that only one brigade, Smith's brigade, on the northwest portion of Cemetery Hill, defends the headquarters of the Union position at Gettysburg. We will take a closer look at Coster's brigade, which is in a desperate action to slow Early's advance against the Union right. The landscape around Gettysburg has changed. The town has expanded over the last century and a half. Coster's stand was between Harrisburg Street here and the railroad here, but it is now a residential area today, so we will remove the modern development. Coster's slim brigade made a desperate stand against Hayes' brigade and Avery's brigade from Early's division. Coster is supported by Heckman's battery. Coster and Heckman are trying to hold off Early's brigades long enough for Schurz's infantry to retreat into town. Heckman's battery has been firing continuously for 30 minutes, expending 113 rounds, mostly canister. Coster makes a courageous stand, but he is outmanned. He must pull back with the rest of Schurz's corps now making their way to town. Heckman remains until Early's lines are right in front. He limbers up, leaving 2 pieces in the hands of the rebel advance. It's about 4:10 p.m. Back at Cemetery Hill, Howard sends a messenger to Doubleday at Seminary Ridge, giving permission for that corps to retreat to Cemetery Hill. Schurz's corps is already in retreat toward Cemetery Hill. We will take a wider view. Doubleday will need help to pull off Seminary Ridge and Oak Ridge in order. Howard has 1 unit available to help the infantry retreat, Buford's cavalry troopers. Gamble's brigade, who had been fighting all day, has been sent to the extreme left flank at Seminary Ridge, keeping Lane's brigade from Pender's division in check. Back at Cemetery Hill, General Winfield Scott Hancock is on the field, and he has assumed field command from General Howard. Howard remains at Cemetery Hill, but he returns to his corps command, which had earlier been under Schurz. Hancock's opposite, General Robert E. Lee, is also present on the field. Lee is on McPherson's Ridge, where so much fighting had occurred earlier that day. So, at about 4:15 from Cemetery Hill, Hancock views the situation. 2 Union corps are in retreat, and 2 Confederate corps are advancing. Smith's brigade, the only defenders on Cemetery Hill, must now spread its regiments along the whole face of the high ground, bracing for Confederate attacks that may materialize from multiple sides. Smith's brigade is supported by Wiedrich's battery on Cemetery Hill here. We will go to the fields north of town. The modern town of Gettysburg has expanded into what were fields in 1863. I have removed much of the later development to recreate the open fields north of town. The railroad here was essentially the north edge of town in 1863. Gettysburg College here, not to be confused with the Lutheran Seminary, was present during the battle. Von Amsberg's brigade, the only brigade still in Howard's corps at the front, is in serious danger of being cut off and surrounded, with Hayes and Avery now coming in behind them. Von Amsberg must now also retreat back to town as to avoid capture by the incoming rebel tide. Von Amsberg is taking terrible casualties at this time. Von Amsberg's retreat completes the collapse of Howard's corps from the fields north of town, the whole of which is now retreating en masse to town. We will slide west to Doubleday's position on Seminary Ridge. I have removed some of the modern development to make the landscape more like 1863. Pender's division is hitting Seminary Ridge, and Rhodes' division is securing Oak Ridge. Doubleday's position on Seminary Ridge and Oak Ridge, the final ridge lines west of Gettysburg, is now untenable. Doubleday, like Schurz, will now need to retreat. But Doubleday wants to maintain an ordered retreat and avoid the situation turning into a rout. His corps will follow the Chambersburg Pike and railroad cut to town in an orderly fashion, given the circumstances. As Rhodes' division secures Oak Ridge, Robinson's division, which consists of Paul's brigade and Baxter's brigade, pulls back to the railroad cut. Then Cutler's brigade, which had been engaged nearly all day, also retreats down the railroad embankment, taking fire from multiple sides. Now the final Union position in action on Seminary Ridge, containing Rowley's division, Meredith's Iron Brigade, and Gamble's cavalry troopers on the far left. With Rhodes on Oak Ridge, Doubleday at Seminary Ridge is now outflanked. Let's step back. I have shaped the modern development of Gettysburg to better match the town in 1863. At this time, Howard's corps is coming into Gettysburg from the northern fields, while 3 brigades from Doubleday's corps are funneling down the railroad embankment toward Gettysburg from the northwest. While rattled, not all of Howard's men are in full flight. Towards the rear of the column, the 45th New York in von Amsberg's brigade rallies. The unit forms into line and provides cover fire for the retreating columns behind it. Let's go to Seminary Ridge and switch to a west-facing position. We are now facing west, and I have removed some modern development. For orientation, the Fairfield Road is here, the Lutheran Seminary is here, the Chambersburg Pike is here, and the railroad cut is here. The final stand of the Union Army on July 1st is at the Lutheran Seminary. Doubleday's remaining brigades are from right to left, the Pennsylvania Bucktails in front, originally under Stone but now under Dana, with Meredith's Iron Brigade behind them, and Biddle's brigade is on the left at the Fairfield Road. Across the Fairfield Road on the extreme left is Gamble's cavalry troopers from Buford's division. The Union defenders at Seminary Ridge do have multiple artillery positions in support. Cooper's battery is at the seminary, Stevens' battery is to the right of him, and Stewart's battery is near the railroad cut. Pender's division is fresh. Scales' brigade is on the rebel left, followed by Perrin, and then Lane on the right. Lane is extended beyond the Union left. In addition, Rhodes' division is appearing above the Union right on Oak Ridge. Doubleday has to get his men out. Biddle's brigade files across Seminary Ridge towards the railroad cut. They follow down the railroad cut toward town, with rebel fire coming from multiple directions. The Pennsylvania Bucktails throw a volley at the incoming gray lines, providing cover fire for the artillery to limber up and withdraw. The artillery exits. The batteries retreat down the Chambersburg Pike and railroad cut toward town. Dana's Pennsylvania Bucktails will now follow down the railroad embankment, and the Iron Brigade proceeds down the Chambersburg Pike. On the Chambersburg Pike, the 7th Wisconsin of the Iron Brigade takes up the rear. As they pass down the turnpike to town, Pender's men fire on them from Seminary Ridge. We have returned to a north-facing map. Rhodes' men have formed on Oak Ridge. The 7th Wisconsin takes enfilading fire from Seminary Ridge and Oak Ridge. Colonel Robinson, in command of the 7th Wisconsin, says this is when the regiment sustained most of its casualties. Gamble's cavalry from Buford's division, which has been in the fight all morning and afternoon, remains on the Union far left at Seminary Ridge at Schultz's Woods below the Fairfield Road, providing some cover and diversion on that flank so the infantry can retreat. Having provided some diversion, Buford's troopers pull off Seminary Ridge into the fields west of Gettysburg. We will take a town-wide view and remove some of the modern development. There are 2 streams of Union troops retreating to town. While Howard's Corps is moving into the north streets of Gettysburg, Doubleday is just approaching town from the northwest. Early's brigades, Hayes and Avery, are pursuing at the northeast of town. On the other side of Gettysburg, Doubleday's men are coming toward town by the railroad cut and Chambersburg Pike, and they have a few advantages. Rhodes' division, which fought for hours at Oak Ridge, is exhausted from a long day's march and whole afternoon of fighting. Their pursuit is slowed by simple fatigue. Also, Gamble's brigade from Buford's cavalry are in the plain between Seminary Ridge and Cemetery Hill, checking Pender's right flank. However, Jubal Early's brigades are still pushing forward. While Avery and Hayes are already near the northeast of town, Gordon, moving in coordination with Dole's brigade from Rhodes' division, advances towards Doubleday's retreating Federals between Seminary Ridge and Gettysburg. The retreating blue columns are also slowed. A foot traffic jam is occurring in town. Howard's Corps is filling the streets of Gettysburg. Gettysburg is a small town with narrow roads, and thousands of men, horses, and wagons have crowded the town. Many of the men are wounded, and a traffic jam has ensued. Doubleday must get his men through this jam before his corps is trapped by the approaching rebels. Let's take a closer look at North Gettysburg, where Howard's men are entering town. Here is the northern section of Gettysburg today. The town's northern edge was largely bounded by the railroad line here. I'll remove some of the modern development to show the town's limits in 1863. The avenues into Gettysburg from the north are Washington Street along the College, Carlisle Street in the center, and Stratton Street on the right. Carlisle Street leads to a town square here. After the town square, Carlisle Street becomes Baltimore Street. Howard's men are retreating down these roads through town. Schimmelpfennig's division, the rear of Howard's Corps, are now entering the town of Gettysburg by way of Washington Street. Hayes and Avery's brigades from Early's divisions are in pursuit of Howard's Corps. Wagons and ambulances at the rear of Howard's line are vulnerable. The 119th New York and Chisinofsky's brigade is at the foot of Washington Street at the threshold of town. There they stop and make a stand, aided by Dilger's cannons on high ground near the town square. They hold the position long enough for the wagons and ambulances to pass into town. The 119th New York and Dilger's artillery provide enough cover for Howard's last columns to enter town. The rear of Howard's Corps is now entering Gettysburg. Dilger limbers up and follows south down Baltimore Street, and the 119th New York follows down Washington Street. But by now Paul's brigade, now under route, from Doubleday's Corps is entering northwest Gettysburg by way of the railroad cut. The remainder of Doubleday's Corps is following behind on the railroad cut and one block parallel on Chambersburg Street. So by about 4:15, there are thousands of Union soldiers, horses, wagons, artillery pieces, and ambulances converging on a few lanes through town. Howard's Corps is largely funneling through town on Baltimore Street and Washington Street, while Doubleday's Corps is now jamming into them where the railroad cut and Chambersburg Street meet at Washington Street. The town of Gettysburg, with its dwellings and narrow streets, presents an obstacle to an ordered retreat. The Union lines become confused in town. Dilger, whose cannons had made a stand at the town square, stated that the main road was completely blockaded by artillery, infantry, and ambulances. With the main road jammed with artillery, infantry, and ambulances, some units detached to parallel roads through town. In Gettysburg, the locals are frightened. They see their blue troops, many of them Pennsylvanians, retreating through the streets. The locals realize the Confederates have won the day. Townspeople, shocked, offer food and drink to the retreating Union soldiers. The traffic jam does not easily resolve itself. By the time the Iron Brigade, which formed a rear section of Doubleday's corps, comes into town on Chambersburg Street, Lieutenant Colonel Rufus Dawes of the 6th Wisconsin noted, "There was much confusion. The streets were crowded with retiring troops, batteries, and ambulance trains. The men were almost prostrated with overexertion and heat. The rebels are right behind the retreating Union lines. The door is closing behind Doubleday's men. By the time Doubleday's last columns are in town, Hayes's sharpshooters are in the streets, flanking the retreating blue lines. We will zoom out. Rebel lines now close in on town. Dole's and Ramser's brigades from Rhodes' division are coming in from the north. Dole's brigade enters town at the northern streets, while Ramser's brigade, with some North Carolina regiments from Iverson and Daniel, approach near the railroad and Chambersburg Pike behind Doubleday. Meanwhile, in Jubal Early's division, Avery's brigade remains near the railroad line northeast of Gettysburg, but Hayes's brigade enters northeast Gettysburg. The fighting now takes to the streets. We will zoom into central Gettysburg, where the front of the Confederate attack meets the back of Howard's columns. At the rear of Howard's columns, the 17th Connecticut throws volleys down one of the main streets at the incoming rebels. The Confederate attack is slowed. However, Confederate troops rush down the street, and the 17th Connecticut falls back, but then it reforms, fires, and falls back again. We will step back. Hayes's brigade is now in town, pursuing Howard's rear columns. Dole's brigade is at the threshold of town, pursuing Doubleday's columns, filing in at Chambersburg Street and Washington Street. Dole's is now at Doubleday's back. At the rear of Doubleday's column is the 6th Wisconsin of the Iron Brigade. The 6th Wisconsin takes fire as it passes through the streets. The Badgers stop, turn, and fire back. Cannonballs and rifle bullets thunder against buildings. Falling bricks cause casualties to the 76th New York from Cutler's brigade. Hayes and Dole's have now caught up to the rear Union columns. The Confederates, who had lost so many men earlier this day, are now settling the score by securing thousands of prisoners in Gettysburg. General Hayes' Confederates, in his own words, are taking prisoners at every turn. On the other side, General Schurz described a similar scene, saying, "A considerable number of men, who became entangled in cross streets and alleys, were taken prisoners by the enemy, who entered the town immediately after us." Let's take a view of Gettysburg. I have removed some of the modern development. For orientation, the town square is here, Washington Street is here, and Baltimore Street is here. The rear Union columns are now in the south part of Gettysburg, and the pursuing rebel columns have nearly controlled the whole town. Isolated Union troops are still being captured in large numbers. For instance, the 45th New York from von Amsberg's brigade had earlier tried to go around the traffic jam at the square, and it followed the Chambersburg Road west, only to end up trapped. General Schimmelpfennig, who had assumed divisional command on this day, becomes trapped behind Confederate lines in town. But Schimmelpfennig manages to avoid capture behind piles of firewood in the yard of a house here on Baltimore Street. The property owners, the Garlick family, secretly brought him meals during the Confederate occupation of the town over the next 2 days. The alley here still bears the name Schimmelpfennig Alley. Von Amsberg is now in command of Schimmelpfennig's brigade. We will pull back. It's nearing 4:30. The surviving Union columns are exiting south of town and approaching Cemetery Hill. The Confederate brigades under Ramseur, Iverson, Doles, and Hayes are in Gettysburg. Avery's brigade is at the railroad east of town. Avery attempts to advance forward from the railroad against the flank of Cemetery Hill. However, Vedrick's battery on Cemetery Hill sees the motion and fires on Avery. Avery pulls back to a depression in the hillside, hidden from the cannons. Cemetery Hill, apparently, is still a strong bastion. We will zoom out to a regional view. Meade's headquarters is at Taneytown, Maryland, 12 miles from Gettysburg. The two closest Union corps to Gettysburg are Slocum and Sickles. Slocum is at Two Taverns, Pennsylvania, about 5 miles from Gettysburg, approaching town on the Baltimore Pike. Sickles is between Emmitsburg, Maryland, and Gettysburg. He is following up the Emmitsburg Road toward town. Birney's division is in front. We will move back to Gettysburg. It's 4:30. The survivors from Doubleday and Howard's corps exit the town and reform near Cemetery Hill. Both Union corps, Doubleday and Howard, have suffered terrible losses. In Doubleday's corps, among the ranks of the 151st Pennsylvania from Biddle's brigade, only 121 of the 467 men who went into the fight that day came out unscathed, a casualty rate of 74%. The 149th Pennsylvania in the Pennsylvania Bucktail Brigade went into action that morning with 450 men. Over the course of the battle, 336 became casualties, a casualty rate of 75%, the great majority of which were sustained on the actions on day one. The Pennsylvania Bucktail Brigade as a whole lost 2 out of every 3 men during the battle, the great majority of them on July 1st. Among the ranks of the 2nd Wisconsin and the Iron Brigade, only 69 of the 302 engaged that day came out unscathed, a casualty rate of 77%. Robinson's division, consisting of the brigades under Baxter and Paul, lost nearly 1,000 captured. The First Corps, which includes the famed Iron Brigade and the Pennsylvania Bucktails, is largely destroyed by the day's fighting, a skeleton of what it had been at sunrise. Howard's Corps suffered similar losses. Howard's Corps in total lost nearly 1,500 men captured. Within Howard's Corps, Schimmelpfennig's division lost some 650 captured. And within Schimmelpfennig's division, von Amsberg's brigade, the final brigade off the field in Howard's Corps, in total loses some 450 men captured, the most captured of all the brigades in Howard's Corps. We will take a closer look at Cemetery Hill, where the battered but not yet broken Union lines are reforming. I will remove some of the modern development to make it look more like 1863. The Emmitsburg Road is here in green, the Taneytown Road is here in yellow, and the Baltimore Pike is here in purple. Cemetery Hill is outlined here, with the Baltimore Pike running through it diagonally. So there's a West Cemetery Hill west of the Baltimore Pike, and an East Cemetery Hill east of the Baltimore Pike. The Evergreen Cemetery Gatehouse, an important architectural landmark present at the time of the battle and still standing, is here. General Hancock now has the responsibility to rebuild the battered Union columns into a force that can hold Cemetery Hill. The disorganized lines of Howard's Corps are put back into formation. Howard's Corps reforms on the eastern side of Cemetery Hill along the Baltimore Pike, while Doubleday's Corps reforms along the Taneytown Road. Steinwehr's division still holds a strong position on Cemetery Hill, where the Taneytown Road and Emmitsburg Road come together. The road in front of Steinwehr here still bears his name, Steinwehr Avenue. Schurz has returned to his division, previously under the now missing General Schimmelpfennig. Schurz's men are on the left of the Baltimore Pike behind Steinwehr, and Ames's division is on the right of the Baltimore Pike. Doubleday's Corps is placed below Steinwehr on the western side of Cemetery Hill at the Taneytown Road. Robinson's division is on the left of the Taneytown Road here, and Rowley is across the road here. Wadsworth's division will soon be moved to the right. To the west of Cemetery Hill, in the open field, is Gamble's cavalry brigade. Lines of battle are established on Cemetery Hill. Skirmishers are set in position in the southern part of town. We will take a wider view. While artillery on Cemetery Hill has stopped Avery's move on the right, Hancock knows he must further protect his right flank. There is high ground here, outlined in yellow. It will be Wadsworth's division, though terribly thinned by casualties, which moves onto this high ground to the right and rear of Cemetery Hill. This high ground takes the name of the local landowner, Culp's Hill. The 5th Maine Battery under Stevens is sent to a knoll between the heights of Culp's Hill and Cemetery Hill. Because Stevens' artillery is placed here, it is often called Stevens' Knoll. Hancock has readied himself for another attack, and indeed, some in the Confederate lines want that attack to commence. It's about 4:45. We will move into town, now controlled by the Confederates. Jubal Early is in town. He rides, looking for General Ewell, Rhodes, or A.P. Hill, hoping to coordinate a follow-up attack on Cemetery Hill, while the Union forces are in disarray. However, Early receives a report from one of his brigades. Smith's brigade, in the rear on the York Pike, fears a Union counterattack is coming against the rebel left. Early is stuck. While he wants to continue the attack, he has not yet met another divisional commander to coordinate an attack on Cemetery Hill, and at the same time, he must also take this potential danger to his far left flank seriously. He sends Gordon's brigade to assist Smith on the York Road. With Gordon and Smith watching the left flank on the York Road, Early only has 2 brigades, Avery and Hayes, remaining on the offensive front. He will need to coordinate with another division if the attack is to continue. Early finds General Rhodes in the streets. Rhodes' men are tired, and the narrow streets have disorganized the units. Rhodes is more cautious. He surmises the Union lines to be re-strengthened on Cemetery Hill. The current situation, in light of Lee's earlier command to avoid a general engagement, persuades General Rhodes to withhold attacking Cemetery Hill and await further orders. We will take a wider look at the town and remove some modern development. For orientation, the railroad cut is here, the town square is here, the Lutheran Seminary is west of town here. By about 4:45, Confederate units have reformed their lines inside town along Middle Street here. Middle Street stretches through town, becoming the Fairfield Road to the west. Baltimore Street runs perpendicular to Middle Street and separates Rhodes' division from Early's division. To the east of Baltimore Street is Hayes's brigade in Early's division. On the west side of Baltimore Street is Dole's brigade in Rhodes' division, followed by the remnants from Iverson's brigade, which had taken heavy casualties attacking Oak Ridge. On Iverson's right is Ramseur, whose line extends to the Fairfield Road west of town to the Seminary. Pender's men on Seminary Ridge can extend south along the ridge below the Fairfield Road. Road establishes a skirmish line in town in front of his general formation. Rhodes has a second line along the railroad cut composed of O'Neill and Daniel's brigades, who had earlier attacked Oak Ridge. The Union side has its own skirmishers at the bottom of town. Back in Gettysburg, General Early does find his corps commander, General Ewell. Early speaks to Ewell about attacking Cemetery Hill. Ewell has received a message from General Lee, stating that he should attack this hill if he can do so to advantage. But Ewell reported, "I could not bring artillery to bear on it, and all the troops with me were jaded by 12 hours marching and fighting, and I was notified that General Johnson's division, the only one of my corps that had not been engaged, was close to town." Thus, Ewell is confident that Cemetery Hill is not possible to take from the current Confederate position in Gettysburg, but the hill next to it, Culp's Hill, appeared to be a more vulnerable and realistic target. He will attack it with a fresh division under Johnson when he arrives. We will return to the Union position south of town. It's approaching 5 o'clock. Hancock, Howard, and Doubleday have prevented the retreat from turning into a rout, and the lines have been reformed on Cemetery Hill and Culp's Hill. The Union line still holds a good position, with both flanks on high ground. We will look at a LiDAR map. Cemetery Hill rises to about 625 feet, and Culp's Hill reaches an elevation of about 630 feet. And by happenstance, Cemetery Ridge runs at an oblique angle, forming a solid flank protection. Likewise, Culp's Hill bends at an angle that is favorable to defend the right flank. The two natural features form a solid barrier for defense. In addition to the topographic advantages afforded by Cemetery Hill and Culp's Hill, the new Union position is also at the junction of the Baltimore Pike, Taneytown Road, and Emmitsburg roads, which provides the incoming corps direct routes of arrival. The Union Army prepares for defense. On the Union left along Cemetery Ridge, Robinson's division builds breastworks. We will take a wider view. As the late afternoon sun glows at 5 o'clock, new lines of battle have been formed on both sides. In A.P. Hill's corps, Anderson's division has arrived and is now at Hare's Ridge, where the battle began in the morning. Heath's division is now on McPherson's Ridge, where it had shed so much of its blood earlier that day. Pender's division is on Seminary Ridge, its left at the Fairfield Road. During the day, A.P. Hill's men had advanced from Hare's Ridge to Seminary Ridge, a distance of 1 mile. In Ewell's corps, Rhodes' division had advanced from Oak Hill to the town of Gettysburg, nearly 1.5 miles. Early's division had advanced down the Harrisburg Road, starting at the opposite side of Rock Creek to the town of Gettysburg, also a distance of about 1.5 miles. So as the summer sun glows, the Confederates now have Pender's division from A.P. Hill's corps on Seminary Ridge, connecting with Ewell's corps through town. On the other side, Doubleday's men are largely on the western side of Cemetery Hill at the Taneytown Road, and Howard's corps is on the eastern side of Cemetery Hill at the Baltimore Pike. The battered remnants of Wadsworth's division hold Culp's Hill on the right. Both sides have more units on the way, and the scene is set for an even larger battle to unfold.